So the sun's going down today, December 29th, 2024, and I found out just a little while ago that Jimmy Carter passed away. He was our 37th president. And to be honest, out of all the presidents that we've had, I felt closest to him, and for good reason. I actually got to shake his hand, but I saw him several times, and I thought I would do a video to pay tribute to him. So that's what this episode of History Hunters is about. As a fan of presidential history, I always note the passing of a U.S. president with great attention, especially Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was president just about when I was a teenager, and at 15, I was an autograph collector. I wrote to Jimmy Carter, as well as a number of other people, and to my surprise, when he was elected president in 1976, I got a presidential invitation to his inauguration, and I still have it. It was later signed by him. Here it is. I was quite proud to receive it, but I figured, I was probably one of a million. And I wasn't really a supporter. I just wrote him a letter of encouragement and all that. Showed it to my teacher, Mr. Linares at Oakdale High School, and he said, "Are you going?" I said, "No, I can't afford it." And so he said, "Well, how about if we try to come up with some funding for your trip?" So it turns out I did get to go. A bunch of civic organizations came through and donated, and my parents were chaperones, so they paid their way. Not only did I get to go to Washington, but the Oakdale City Council in my hometown voted to make me the town's official representative to Carter's inauguration. It was quite an amazing day, if I remember it very vividly. The day was very cold, and it was one of the last inaugurations on the east steps of the Capitol, where all the famous presidents like Lincoln and Kennedy and FDR got to take their oaths of office. So I remember it was very cold. I remember watching that TV. Jimmy Carter slipped and almost fell on his butt on the ice outside of the White House. It was that icy and that cold. And I will never forget that trip, because that was probably the last trip that I took with my parents together. And very memorable. I was so close I could see Jimmy Carter smile in his teeth. The grin will win. That was his famous election campaign slogan. I was as close enough to see him smiling.
And I have just taken the oath of office on the Bible my mother gave me just a few years ago, opened to a timeless admonition from the ancient prophet Micah. He has showed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God.
Of course, I remember all the other people on the stage. That was very cool. So when my parents and I were back there, we did some sightseeing. We actually made a trip to Mount Vernon and saw the tomb of George and Martha Washington. That was pretty neat. And then he came to Sacramento, California. I believe it was like the following year. I think it was 1978. And I remember at that time the Iranians were protesting in Sacramento. My brother and I were waiting for him at the K Street Mall, and time went on, and I had my little brother with me, and we were getting bored, so we moved down K Street, I believe it was K Street, to see the presidential limousine come through. And I snapped this beautiful picture of him. Of course, back then when you took pictures, you had no idea if your pictures were going to turn out. And so when I got them back, I not only got a great picture of him grinning out the window of the presidential limousine, but I also got a picture of one of the follow-up cars. Former Governor Edmund G. Pat Brown, got a beautiful shot of him in his less than limousine status car. Later, I had former Governor Brown sign the back of my Sacramento snapshot of him through the mail, and I still have it. And then in 1980, Jimmy Carter came to Merced, California, and I went there. It was a lottery system to get into the Merced Junior College auditorium, And my grandparents got tickets. I got a ticket. One of my friends at the time, I went with her, and then my grandparents also were outside. My grandmother got to sit inside with us. We were there so early, I decided I wanted to try to sit close to the edge, so when the president came by, we could shake his hand. So I made this huge sign that says, "Mr. President, please shake our hands." And I wanted to hold it high. And turns out that the seats we had were like 2 rows behind Mrs. Carter and Governor Brown. And the president came out. He was with Congressman Tony Coelho. And I held up my sign real high. And as he scanned the crowd, I could see his eyes stop on my sign. And I read his lips. He said, "I will," meaning I will shake your hands. So that was pretty neat. I was like, oh, giddy. I wish I had that sign. I don't know what I did with that sign. But the president read my sign, came back around later. It was chaos. After the speech, it was chaos because he walked the floor. And of course, everybody scrambling to get close to him. The president came up. Actually, I think I shook Mrs. Carter's hand after his. But he's, when the president's shaking hands, he's pumping both hands into the crowd. And I happened to grab his left hand, and I felt the palm of his hand. It felt like a marshmallow. It was just incredibly soft. My grandfather said, because he shook his hand outside, my grandfather said it was the softest hand he ever shook in his life. So I asked Mrs. Carter to sign my ticket, but she declined. And while she was shaking my hand, she told me that the Secret Service behind her, wouldn't let her. She told me that if I sent it to the White House, that she would sign it and send it back. Well, I did, and I never saw the ticket again. So after I shook the Carter's hands, I followed Governor Brown around, tapped him on the shoulder because he was walking away from me, and I wanted a handshake. He spun around, and he actually thanked me, but I was wondering if anyone remembered him. I certainly remembered him because he was the governor who accompanied JFK to Yosemite. So when I think about that incident, I think about my grandparents who, obviously have passed away since then. So it was our special time with the President of the United States. And from there, he helicoptered to Modesto, California for a fundraiser. And I was there when he left the fundraiser to go to his chopper. I got some incredible shots of him waving at the base of the chopper. And then as the chopper flew around Modesto, he was looking down waving. And I got to see him one more time. It was when President Ronald Reagan opened his presidential library. I got press credentials to go to that, and I got to see all 5 presidents when they came out. Very special. It was Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, and Bush, all lined up, posing for what seemed like maybe a 60-second photo op, maybe less. And so I squeezed off a shot, had a great picture of them together. And so, through the years, I've collected some memorabilia signed by Mr. Carter. Let me show you this. This is a pretty cool shot of him, and it kind of reminds me of the time in Merced, Best Wishes, Jimmy Carter. He liked to sign his name J. Carter a lot, so whenever you find the Jimmy Carter, you got something special. And again, I hoarded. Now, I hate to tell you this, but this is all Jimmy Carter autographs. And it extended to family members. But yeah, special time. I did vote for Jimmy Carter in '80. It was the last Democrat I voted for. One more thing I want to show you. In this box, I have a piece of Plains, Georgia. Now, it's a piece of wood, and it's signed by Jimmy Carter. And on the back, it says, it was handcrafted by Jimmy Carter. I got that on eBay. And let me tell you what that's all about. It comes with this certificate. This is a limited edition, and it's notarized, and in 1991 certified that this authentic piece of historic Plains High School was personally cut, planed, and signed by Jimmy Carter in his own wood shop located in his home in Plains, Georgia. We also certified that only 500 numbered pieces were signed by Jimmy Carter. And if I'm not mistaken, Sybil Carter was his sister. She signed this as well. So it's more special now that he's passed. So I want to thank you for letting me reminisce about Jimmy Carter. Not the most successful president in history, in my opinion, but an honest, decent, good guy who taught humanity to be more human. I think he stressed honesty, and he stressed living a noble life. My only regret is that I never got to go to Plains, Georgia and see him at his church, because I know he posed with a lot of people who came down to Plains, Georgia. So hopefully I will get to Plains, Georgia. It'll be too late. Jimmy Carter has passed away, but I hope to visit his grave if there's an open grave site. And hopefully in the near future we'll do an episode on Plains, Georgia. But I want to thank you so much for watching this episode that I didn't expect I'd be doing at the end of 2024. Thanks so much.